So today's video is about finding a percent of a number and finding a whole. So how do you find a percent of a number? So the first option is to change the percent to a decimal and then multiply. The second option is to find an equal ratio. So let's look at this question. What is 25% of 36? So my first option is that I can simply change the percent to a decimal and then multiply. So the first thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find what is this piece of 36. I know it's a piece that's 25% of it. How big is that piece? So I know that 36 is the whole thing. I want to know what is 25% of that big piece. So to find that answer, I'm going to multiply by the percent. So first, I got to change the percent to a decimal, so that I'm going to take 25% and change it to a decimal. I'm going to cross out the percent sign, move the decimal flat 2 places, and so then 25% gives me 25 hundredths. Once I've changed it, then I can simply multiply it by 36, and the answer is 9. So what that means is that 25% of 36 is 9. So let's look at this same question, but let's look at a different strategy. So the other way that I can solve this kind of problem is to find an equal ratio or set up a proportion. Again, I'm trying to find what is 25% of 36. So I want to know if 36 is the whole thing, what is 25% of that? What is that piece? So when I set up my ratio, the first thing I have to do is I have to set up the ratio showing the percent ratio compared to what I'm looking for in the problem. So I'm going to use the percent ratio of percent over 100 equals part over whole. So I'm always going to put my percent over 100 because that's what percent means, out of 100. So it's always going to go over 100. And then my second ratio is going to be the part over the whole, because we've talked about how a percent is like a fraction that compares the part to the whole. So when I'm looking at this fraction, I have to decide, what is 36? Is 36 just a piece of something bigger, or is 36 the whole thing? Well, if I'm trying to find what is 25% of 36, that means I'm trying to find a piece of 36. So that means 36 has to be the whole thing. So when I set up my ratio, I've got to set it up where I've got 25 over 100, because remember the percent always has to have 100 as the denominator. And then the second ratio is that part over whole. And I have to be thinking, again, what is 36? So we said 36 is the whole thing, and what we're looking for is the part of it. So then 36 will go at the bottom because it's the whole, and then the part that I'm missing is the end. So I'm going to put the end there for the part. So now I simply cross multiply, and I get 36 times 25 on one side and then 100 times that on the other. I'm going to multiply 36 times 25, which gives me 900, and then on the other side 100 times n will just give me 100n. Then from there I'm going to divide both sides by 100, and then it's left with that n equals 9. So again, what does that mean? It means that 25% of 36 is 9. So we keep seeing that this 25% piece, this part of 36, is only 9. So now let's look at how you solve a percent problem when you're asked to find the whole. So they've given you the piece. They want you to find, well, what is that a piece of? So the first option is you can change the percent to a decimal and then divide. The second option is, again, doing a proportion or finding an equal ratio. So I have 40 is 10% of what number? So I'm trying to think, okay, 40 is just 10% of something else. What is it 10% of? So it's 10% of something bigger. So the first thing I'll do is change the percent to a decimal. So to do that, I'm going to cross out the percent sign, move the decimal 2 places backwards, and so then 10% gives me 10 hundredths. Then I'm going to now take 40 and divide it by that. So then 40 divided by 10 hundredths gives me 400. So what that means is that 40 is 10% of 400. So 40 is just 10% of this bigger number of 400. So if I were like to draw a picture of it, I would have 400 squares, and then I would only color in 40 of them. So 40 is 10% of 400. So now let's look at the same question, but now let's look at it by doing an equal ratio or a proportion. So we're going to use the same format as we did in example 1. Both ratios will be part over whole. The difference is this time we don't know the whole for the second ratio. We only know the part. So we know that 40 is 10% of something. So that means 40 is just a piece. The question is, what is it a piece of? Because it's a piece of something bigger. So we've got to know, well, what's that bigger number that it's a piece of? So I've got to set up this ratio again. Remember, percents always go over 100, so it's going to be a percent over 100, and then again, it's going to be compared to the second ratio, which is just going to show the part to whole ratio. So then this will be my setup. I'll have 10, which is the 10% over 100, because the percent always goes over 100. And then this time 40 isn't the whole thing, it's just the part. So it's going to go at the top, and the part that I'm missing, the n, is going to go at the bottom. So now when I set that up, I have 10 times n on one side equals 40 times 100 on the other side. And then 10 times n gives me 10n, and then 40 times 100 gives me 4,000. Then to get the variable alone, I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And then once I do that, it gives me that n equals 400. So now again, I know that 40 is 10% of 400. So when you are solving a percent problem, the first thing that you can do is you can either multiply by the percent or you can divide, and it's just important to figure out, am I finding the percent, am I finding the part, or am I finding the whole? The second thing that you can do is you can find an equal ratio and make sure that you're using the ratio proportion, which would be percent over 100 equals part over whole. All right, go ahead and teach the tiger something that you learned in today's video.